you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate it. The ChrisVossShow.com. We've been around for 16 years, over 300 episodes, bringing you all the amazing people, their stories, their journeys to life. And as we always say on the show, stories are the owner's manual to life. That's how we kind of learn we're not alone in the problems we have. I'm sure everyone's got problems, right? Or is it just me? Anyway, so be sure to further share your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking to her about her insights, her experience, and some of the things you're going to learn about from her, because that's the whole point of the show, to learn stuff. If you're not learning stuff on the show, what the hell are you doing? I'm just drunk and listening, Chris. It sounds fun. Anyway, we have Dr. Pamela Buchanan on the show. She is a board-certified physician, speaker, and thought leader dedicated to transforming healthcare and championing mental well-being. With 20-plus years of medical experience, she's a TEDx speaker known for her powerful talk on emotional flatline. Describes my last 10 marriages. It explores the emotional toll of the high-stress ER during the pandemic. As the author of Oxygen Mask Principle, Dr. Buchanan teaches self-care as a revolutionary act for working mothers, healthcare professionals, and high achievers. She's currently an ambassador with the Lorna Breen Foundation that has a focus to prevent physician suicide. We can't have that. We need these people to save us. Her work extends into physician coaching and consulting. She is passionate about coaching physicians throughout burnout so they can stay in practice. Burnout is bad. So her mission is to, very bad, it can hurt sometimes, that's what the drinking is about that I referenced earlier in the show. People just getting drunk and I'm going to listen to the show and tune out. Don't do that, folks. Be good to yourself. She's on a mission to help people break free from burnout, prioritize self-care, and live with purpose. And she runs a wellness and weight loss telemedicine site as well. Welcome to the show. How are you, Doc?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me on.
I didn't write it. You did. But thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
drbstrong.com is where you can find me, and get onto the mailing list so that I can share medical health tips with you weekly.
And then what's the title of the new book that's coming out?
So I've been working on a new book based on the TED Talk that I did when I talked about my personal neurodivergence, my story, and, physician suicide, how I overcame burnout. And it's going to be called Blackface White Coat, the Blackface White Coat Anatomy of the Emotional Flatline. And that should be out within the next 6 weeks.
Should be available on Amazon, wherever fine books are sold, I guess.
It will be, as well as Dr. B. Strong will be on my website as well. And I will send out any of my newsletter subscribers the information.
And people should check out your TEDx talk as well. Emotional Flatline. So give us a 30,000 overview of what's in the new book and what you do.
Okay. So I am a physician, been a physician for the last 20 years, and I work in the emergency room in rural Missouri, about 1 hour outside of St. Louis. And kind of the book goes through what I went through as a physician during the pandemic, the stressors that go along with being a physician, and how it's so sneaky, it's so insidious, how you end up burnt out and overwhelmed. Because as a physician, it's taught to power on, to soldier on. Our whole training is about that. It's not fun and games like you see on Grey's Anatomy or Chicago Medicine. that is not real life. It is quite stressful.
It's not a bunch of people sleeping together and basically.
Yeah, there's that. There's actually a lot of that. How is she going to cope? But it's not as cute as it is on TV. It's usually messy with wives coming and throwing things.
Everyone's hair isn't perfect. Maybe.
No, not perfect. It's very messy.
Yeah. So, why are you covered in blood? Let me tell you a story. That's usually what I say to the cops when they show up at the house. So it's kind of would you say it's kind of a memoir of what happened during COVID? Because, I mean, it was a real crisis time for everybody, but especially our doctors and nurses, because they were the medical people holding us together and, having to make the hardest decisions in the world. And you couldn't hold hands with the person as they were passing away. Sometimes you couldn't be in the room with them. And I mean, it probably had to take more of an emotional toll on you guys than it ever had taken before in that scenario.
More than you know, and I don't have words for it. And many of us just didn't deal with it, but I felt like I had to deal with it. I was just powering on and working a lot, but one of our colleagues at ER committed suicide during that time. And so it made me take a hard look. Am I okay? Let me make sure. And I found at that time that getting mental health care actually is super duper complex. I guess that's by nature for the insurance companies, but it's very difficult to get help. And so it gave me a better understanding. And I feel like I'm a better doctor because I understand what a patient goes through to get mentally healthy.
And now you help other doctors help themselves. Do you have any stats off the top of your head on how big a doctor, healthcare provider suicide is by chance?
Oh, yeah. One physician dies per day from suicide. Wow. And that's about a whole medical school class wiped out every year. And I didn't even know that until I was dealing with my own depression. I did not know. It's not much talked about. I don't hear it on the news. It seems like it should be. But I thought maybe the public would be afraid. But it's something we need to address. And then on top of that, 68% of doctors are burned out. And that's one of the most recent studies. And after the pandemic, 41% of healthcare workers left the field. So my thought process is that this is not sustainable. We can't all quit. And I don't think people who are doing such a great service to humanity, such as saving lives, should be miserable doing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we need to keep these folks around. We've had a lot of doctors and healthcare providers on the show. And one thing we've talked about is, like you said, we had a lot of people leave over COVID, the business. There's a lot of people who are leaving over, trying to get insurance payouts and lawsuits and all this sort of riffraff that goes around this sort of thing. But they also talked about, generationally, a lot of younger kids, they're more interested in becoming TikTok influencers and Instagram influencers than they are being doctors. And even just the glut of the population, you have the boomers that are retiring, you have much smaller generations coming in to fill the void. And, there's not enough support out there. And some of the doctors that have come on my show have said, we're in for a real crisis, especially in smaller areas like the one you're in, where there's not going to be enough rural hospitals, not enough rural doctors, when I think there's already a severe shortage as it is. So we have some real problems coming down the pike.
We do. And they're problems we can't afford to ignore anymore. Yeah. And it's just, and for the reality of it is, doctors either do one of two things. Some have the luxury of being able to leave the field because maybe they have a secondary income or some other finances. But most are, indebted up to their ears because the average medical student has over $400,000 in medical school debt. So they have to work, whether you like it or not. And I think there's a better way to work. And it's a better way to reframe your mindset to be able to do this kind of work that we do, this very important work.
And you guys work long hours, long shifts. I don't know how you guys do it. My brother interned, I think, to eventually become a doctor. I think he ended up I think he's a radiologist or something. He holds the thing that scans the women's bellies that are pregnant. And that sounds weird, doesn't it? But, it's radiology, I think. I don't know. I'm clearly not in the medical field. But, the long hours you guys have to work, sometimes these 24-hour, 18-hour shifts or something like that. Do I have that right? We
do. I think you're speaking more so of residency. When you're in residency, emergency training, what you see on Grey's Anatomy, you can work up to 30 hours on that overnight shift. And yes, that is brutal. And when I was doing it, that was back in 2005, you were on call every 3 days. So every 3 days, you can expect to work a 30-hour shift. And yes, it was grueling and it was exhausting. I remember some times where I drove home and didn't know how I got there. But one time I always talk about is I remember sitting at a stop sign, waiting on it to turn green. And that's not a stop sign. It was not a stoplight. It was a stop sign.
Wow. This is, you need more coffee. I've often wondered how people can deal with that amount of stress. I mean, when you're young, maybe you can pull it off, but definitely as you get older and, the body breaks down and stuff. And, you guys experience life and death too. I'm a huge dog fan, and I would love to go do volunteer work at a dog clinic or dog shelter sort of thing. But I couldn't handle the death. I couldn't handle the loss. I couldn't handle the injury. I'm just not built that way. And, I have lots of reverence for people that can, and they can handle that. But there is a lot of high suicide in vets. There's high suicide in psychologists, I believe. There's high suicide in doctors. And I imagine part of the debt that they go through is I did mortgages for 20 years. I would meet doctors that have been out of school for 10, 20 years, and then they would still be owing so much money that they basically were still living on minimum wage. I remember one guy, he was a pharmacist, and he made really good money per year, but by the time he got done paying all of his debts for his college work, I mean, he could just afford a simple cookie cutter home that everyone else had. I was just, wow.
Exactly. And I think that's the public doesn't get that. Many people have the misconception that doctors are rich, but not always. There are some who have the savvy to make other outside investments, but just the day-to-day physician work is not what's going to create wealth.
Yeah. And in today's world where, insurance companies fight you for everything, I mean, I've heard a lot of doctors have quit. So you do coaching to help these docs. Let's get into some of the offerings that you do on your website and how you work with them. Do you work with all different types of doctors from any field and healthcare providers?
Yes, I work with doctors, pharmacists. I've even worked with some executives, healthcare executives and other executives, because we have the same problems. It's the same kind of high expectation, not enough time, and just not enough hours in the day. So it seems like we are trying to live and do the impossible, but nonetheless, we try. And then what I often see in all of these types of people is burning the candle at both ends, to the point where there's something that makes you stop. Usually the body keeps count and catches up. For the most part, I work with women. And what I see in women generally is a health issue is usually the thing that brings them to me, meaning that they become ill. They can't really work in the capacity in which they were working. One of the things that I know is that women have 80% of the autoimmune diseases that occur. And so there's a gene that could be turned on or not turned on. But stressors are one of the things that cause it to express itself. And once it expresses itself, then you end up having an autoimmune disease. What's an autoimmune disease? Things like lupus, things like rheumatoid arthritis, sarcoidosis, things where your body is attacking its own body. And that's more common in women for those reasons. Wow. It's like women work themselves to death, literally. And that's why I feel like this type of coaching is very important. And I do feel like we need to keep physicians in practice, specifically women.
We've had people on the show that have talked about that very thing that you mentioned. The body keeps score, and it seems like we tend to house trauma in different parts of our body, and it festers. And if we don't really take care of ourselves and clean it out. I think I had some folks on the show that talked about how caretakers, people who work in old home facilities. My sister's in a care center with MS. they deal with a high amount of depression. They actually have higher Alzheimer's, I think, and other diseases that come to them because of the stress, the loss of sleep. Even like human caretakers, like, I can see where human caretakers suffer and stuff. And of course, doctors, you guys, I can't imagine working in an ER room for a shift and being not moved by any sort of tragedy that's come before you in a human element. And I mean, I can't imagine that, that doesn't take some sort of toll, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And so I think it's important that we have this and we recognize that, people need to time out. People need to, take care of themselves. They need to do self-care and heal. Am I on the right track there?
That's exactly. I probably couldn't have said it better myself. It's just that those who care for others need to prioritize caring for themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to do that because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And we need, when you come into the hospital for an emergency, you want your doctor on. You want him or her well rested and in a good mind state. That's what we need to do. We need to support those who are taking care of the world.
Whenever I stop by the ER, I grab some Starbucks coffee and give my doc a back massage rub, and I hire one of those people that comes in, the NFL people that beat you up and, I make an ice bath for him and stuff. I just try and... That's
how I show up to work every shift. I do. I show up at Starbucks. I huddle with the nurses. I give them a massage. I was like, let's have a good shift. Mindset is everything.
Yeah. And then what you alluded to before is one of your keynotes that you've done is the oxygen mask principle. Tell us about that, because that kind of flows into this.
Yeah, the oxygen mask principle, I wrote a book about that and I also do a keynote about that. And it's about prioritizing your self-care. And the principle I have is that you take care of yourself first. You think about yourself first and imagine a reality where you have everything you need. You take real actionable steps towards doing that. And you set boundaries and you protect your time. And by having that and teaching that to physicians, because physicians are taught to take care of everyone else. We know how to do that so well. But we are not taught to take care of ourselves and the things that are important to us. And so that's why you see such a high divorce rate in doctors. I know a lot of doctors that have very strained relationships with their children and family, because just prioritizing and creating some harmony, because there's no balance. When you're a doctor, there's no balance. You're lopsided in terms of the time you have, especially depending on what kind of doctor you are, but you can make harmony. And I teach doctors to schedule you first and then put everything else next.
Yeah. I'm a single guy who runs big singles groups where we do meetups and people meet because, that used to be the way we used to meet up and work. And, dating apps really haven't been that great. And I've tried dating nurses and it's hard because, you'll have a date with them and they're like, I got called in. And, they're working these long shifts. Usually, sometimes I have to pick a weird day, like a Tuesday, to go out as opposed to a weekend. And I can see how it's hard on relationships. It's hard on family. I can see how it's hard on women. You mentioned women suffer a lot from it because, they're being mothers. They're trying to be caretakers of their family as well as being caretakers to, people in the hospital. It's a big burden. I can't even imagine it. Like, I have a boundary against seeing blood in movies. That's how big of I'm one of those people who almost passes out when you take my blood. I'm that big of a baby. And, that's my boundary. But, it's something that's important for you guys to set as well and take care of yourselves. And maybe, does the public need to support you guys more? I remember at the start of COVID, it was really wonderful to see people outside hospitals honking and stuff like that, if you remember that. But then it all kind of died off into some really hateful shit.
It did. So that's probably part of the anatomy, what I call the anatomy of the burnout of some healthcare professionals, because yes, that was that sharp swing. Like, we love you and we hate you now, because you're perpetuating the whatever you think about COVID. People became stressed, and then they needed a source to thwart the anger towards. And so it was the healthcare system for a while. And I noticed firsthand people coming into the ER just mean, saying the most heinous and awful things. And you're thinking, man, I am, giving it all I got here. I've not seen my family in an extended period of time. So it felt like a slap in the face. And I think that that was part of what led some people to leave. They're like, I risked my life, because you really did. We really risked our lives.
You guys did.
The beginning, when we didn't know. I don't know too many people who have the experience that I had, wherein I was worried about whether or not I would kill my family.
Yeah.
Was I bringing something home that could kill them? And so I stayed above the garage, and that was very isolating, and you didn't have anybody to decompress with and talk about what you've seen for the day, which was horrible. It seemed like
you're already isolated with COVID.
Right. But, your family's staying away from you. They're actually scared of you. I remember that. And I was horrified. If I have a son who has an autoimmune issue, and he takes a medicine that causes his immune system to be weaker. And so I thought that if he got COVID for me, I could not live that down. And so I was so careful.
Yeah, I had a good friend of mine whose wife worked in one of the hospitals, I think, in California, and they had to separate the house and put all sorts of stuff up. And, he would talk about the challenges and what they were going through. And yeah, and then if you've got someone who's autoimmune, I was always worried about passing it to my mother, who was older. My sister, of course, my mother used to go see my sister at the care center every day. And, then it got to where we can only go wave at her through the window. And yeah, it was a pretty interesting time. And I would hope that we've learned some lessons from it. And I would hope that books like yours are going to inspire people to really rethink this. Because if we don't take care of our caretakers, there's not going to be anybody to take care of us. I guess that's kind of selfish to say, isn't it?
It is not selfish, because healthcare is one of the cornerstones of modern society.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what good is a hospital if there's no one in it to run it? And I can't just stand back idly and watch one by one, day by day. As doctors that I know, I have several friends who are completely done, have washed their hands. Nurses that I know that have decided, I'm just going to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom. And that's okay. But we can't all do that, because our society is aging. We have the baby boomers getting older and older. Now, my generation is Gen Z, will be older. And I think about me as I get out of my 40s and become older. I want someone there to take care of me. So we need to support the younger generation in medicine. And our systems are flawed. They don't work. The paradigm needs to shift. And so that's why I do physician coaching. My hope is that, as I speak about this, like I do at conferences and workshops, that eventually this will be second hat. We'll have physician coaches at most facilities, at medical facilities. And so we just need a movement where we train those people.
Is there anything like that inside, like in high school, you can go see the high school nurse there, eh? Is like anything like that in a doctor's office where you can go, have a, you can go see him and say, hey, I need shoulder to cry on, or need to talk to somebody about something. Is there any sort of resources like that are offered through the medical system? Like,
not consistently. And that is the paradigm shift and change that, they say, be the change you wish you could see in the world. I wish that was there for me. And that's what I'm creating.
Maybe I just got into espresso. Maybe I should just drag my espresso machine down the local ER, and I'll just be a cheerleader. I'm pretty good at that sort of thing.
And I think, my blood is 50% espresso. I don't. Really? If you're not drinking coffee, what are you doing, man? That's one of the first questions I ask when I have a new doctor. So, what kind of coffee do you like? It's either you like coffee or you like Red Bull. Otherwise, I'm concerned. Ain't no way. Just ain't no way you're getting through this doctor life without some kind of stimulant. And I hope it's not the illegal kind of stimulant. So I'm like, coffee, Red Bull, some type of energy drink, 5-hour energy shot. And if I go down that line and you don't drink those, I need a new doctor.
If I ever go see the doctor again, I try and avoid them. They're wonderful people. I haven't thinking about blood and needles, but if I ever go, you remind me, I'm just going to drag my coffee machine in there. I'll just set up, cause ER sometimes takes a while, I think nowadays. So I'll just drag my espresso machine. I'll make free espresso. Who wants espresso? Yeah, I know he's bleeding out of the table, but this is really good beans right here. This espresso.
I have a scalpel in one hand and espresso in the other.
Espresso. I'll just hand him out. The doctor will be like, nurse, scalpel, Chris, espresso.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I get a biscotti with that? So let's talk about your other website where you do telemedicine services. Talk to us about what that is. And I imagine that's kind of geared more towards consumers.
That is geared towards consumers, but I use it, in my coaching program. I talk about marrying your mind, your body, and your spirit all together, because I do believe that the reason that many doctors are so disconnected is that we're disconnected from our purpose. And so you figure out where your purpose is, and I help people go through that journey, because your purpose is the best of what you have to give to others. And so just really honing in on that through an introspective, journey that I take you through, and we kind of connect to your why. Now, when you know what your purpose is, then you can be more fulfilled in what you do. And if you have fulfillment in work, then it's not like I have to make you do it. You're connected to your why. And most people who become doctors, we don't just want to be doctors. It's been a dream since, you've had this romantic fantasy about it, but somehow you grow up and actually do it. It becomes a nightmare, but it does not have to be. And so in my coaching program, we talk about that. You develop your purpose. And now let's talk about the second part, the big elephant in the room. Many doctors are completely unhealthy. And that's because we're stressed out and we're not taking care of ourselves. We are working so hard keeping you alive that we're not even considering our own issues. Right. Yeah. And that's evidence in some studies. One of the things that made me really think about myself is that there was one study that said the average age of an ER physician was 57 years old. There are other studies that say it's older, but if 57 is it, then I say I'm in my 40s. I need to slow it down. So I talk to doctors and we talk about how can we really optimize your health, make sure you're moving, make sure that you're actually doing all the things you tell your patients to do. And from there, you got your mindset, and you're working on your health. And at that point, we talk about how you can be fulfilled in your job and in your purpose, whether that be staying in medicine, or some people decide they want to do a side hustle and work less with medicine, or start a business. Yeah. Whatever fulfills you.
According to the internet, take it for what it's worth. According to recent data, the average age of a licensed physician is around 51.9 years old. So I'm 57. I can barely get up out of bed.
I'm 49. I have a lot of energy, and the medicine is not going to take me out in my 50s, man. I'm not going to do that. I have learned a lot in the last couple of years about how to take care of myself.
A 50% espresso blood level, evidently, this helps.
It does. That's like the Sabrina song, Me Espresso.
Yeah. Me espresso. In fact, I drank a regular coffee today, a K-cup coffee, because I was too tired to make the espresso and warm up the machine, all that stuff. And I was like, I'll just have a coffee to get me seated so that I can, get the body to move, tape back on the falling off parts and stuff that fall off at night. I'm 57. That's normal. At least what I've been told by my doctor. He drinks a lot, though.
A lot of what?
I'm just making up jokes. He drinks a lot of coffee. So anyway, I woke up this morning and had a K-cup, and I was like, this is the most grossest water ever. And I'm like, oh God, get the espresso maker going. Maybe someone should make a really strong, high caffeinated coffee for doctors. Your website's called Strong Medicine. Maybe we should have a Strong Medicine coffee you should sell.
Yeah, but I have to focus my energies. Too many hats, and I get nothing.
That's true. That's true. There is kind of in the Strong Medicine and logo, there is kind of a coffee bean there. It looks like a brain, but I'm pretty sure it's a coffee bean. That, or I'm just obsessed with espresso. So,
my brain is made of coffee. So, and the Strong Medicine website, that's weight loss coaching and the ability to prescribe the GLP-1 medications to help with weight loss, because obesity is the root cause of so many chronic diseases, and taking care of obesity decreases hypertension, diabetes, arthritis, just to name a few.
That's true. I mean, I have enemies that say that because I'm fat, I'm a chronic disease, but that's another story. So you on the website, you prescribe Ozempic and some of those different things that people are using now to lose weight.
Yeah, those, if your insurance will cover them. And also there's the option to buy the compounded version if your insurance will not cover it.
So do you have to self-administer the compounded version? Is that where you go home and...
You have to self-administer any type of version.
Do you?
They are all injections, and you have to give them to yourself.
Oh boy, I hate needles. I get testosterone supplement, but they shoot me up for that. But that's about all I can handle.
They do it for you. I mean, there are options to do it for you, but it's not hard. I pay
extra for that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I do it on purpose, because if I try to jam myself with a needle, I'd probably pass the hell out. I'm a baby. I'm just a big boob.
People like that. I don't know why I tend to find that more of my male patients than female patients. I don't know.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I started testosterone therapy a year and a half ago, and up until then, I probably had, I don't know, 20 shots in my life. Now I've had 5 billion. So I'm getting there. I don't know. So people can do how does it work with the telemedicine services, Strong Medicine? Do people reach out to you?
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
There's a sign-up sheet on there, and then that goes to the assistant and alerts him to sign the patients up. We do a video visit, and your medicine's prescribed. If you don't have any contraindications, there are people who should not take that medicine.
Oh, really? Wow. So you make sure that they're all in the right place for all that stuff and help them. I noticed that you have some nutrition tips here on the website. Nutrition's probably important too in losing weight.
That's the key that people forget. They think that I'm going to take a shot and do whatever I want.
Yeah, go to McDonald's again.
One thing about these medications is you won't feel like eating those things, but if you're not eating the right things, if you're not getting enough protein, you'll find that you will lose weight that you don't want to lose. You'll lose muscle mass, and then you'll have a lot of cellulite, and you want to enjoy the look that you have. That's the thing that we see in the news. It's called Ozempic butt, and you don't want that. You want to definitely work out regularly, build your muscle, get enough protein so that you look svelte and you have good cosmetic appearance when you lose this weight.
Yeah, that'll get the chicks. I have something, I think there's a medical technical term to it. It's called fat ass. Fat butt.
Okay. All right. I get it.
So people can reach out to you there. They can book a consultation, all that good stuff. They can reach out to you on your website. Give everyone a final pitch out on everything they do, how they can get in contact with you, et cetera, et cetera.
All right. For any physicians and executives who need coaching and are burnt out, I'm starting a cohort that begins in March, and I'll be giving information on my website about the webinar. And you can reach out to me at drbstrong.com. That's drbstrong.com. Also, text strong to 55444, where I can send you tips, like 5 tips about not burning out. So 5 tips to combat burning out. I can send that to you when you text 5544. Text strong to 55444.
Because we need our medical doctors. I'm getting old, and like I said, the body parts are falling off. So I'm going to need somebody eventually. That or I'm going to move to, I don't know, Zimbabwe. I don't know. I don't have a joke for this, so I'm just going to run with Zimbabwe. I don't know why Zimbabwe. It just seems like a nice place to go. Do they have free health care there? I think that's what I'm trying to imply.
That's probably where you should go as you get older. A place with free health.
Canada or Mexico. I've often thought that. I'm like, I don't know. I wonder if it's going to get so bad here with the healthcare system that I'm going to have to be, one of those. My, in the 70s, my grandmother used to always go to Mexico for all her medications because they were cheaper there, like antibiotics and.
That's still the case.
It's still the case.
A lot of people do that. They go to Mexico to get their medicines. But now a concern would be if certain medicines you get, you wonder if they're safe or if they're laced with something that you don't want in your medicine.
That's true. Thank you very much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss One, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.